This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
Welcome to The Secret Life of Cookies, where we try to solve the world's problems through the miracle of carbohydrates, one recipe at a time, with host Marissa Rothkopf and her dog, Bosco.
On this week's episode, my special guest is David Wolstencroft, writer and showrunner for shows such as MI5, The Escape Artist, which starred David Tennant, and the bodice-ripping blockbuster historical drama, Versailles, which of course makes David an expert on the making of kings, which is quite relevant to this week. Oh, and we also talk about why the passing of Queen Elizabeth has rendered the unemotional British emotional, and what an odd contrast Liz Truss will be to His Royal Highness Charles, King of England. That is odd to say, King of England. Anyway, this week we also make a very British cake. And to get your hands on that recipe from today's show, please subscribe to my Substack at marissarothkopf.substack.com. And on with the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Secret Life of Cookies. After a small break, we are rejoining you. By we, I of course mean the royal we, because this is a week in which we speak of the royal we. And I have as my guest the great, the wonderful, and somebody I haven't seen in 20 years, David Wolstencroft. David Wolstencroft comes to us currently from Ojai, California, but hails from the British Isles. He is also, and this is probably more pertinent to all of you listening out there, he is the creator of, I would call him a writer, a showrunner, one of my favorite words, a writer, a showrunner, an author. And of note, you have been the creator of MI5.
Correct. Yes.
Back in the day, you like fell out of Cambridge and just got a job and wrote.
Thanks to you, I could suddenly say chocolate and coffee, and I could.
That's right.
I was just melting into the cultural mix.
Totally. I didn't teach you that one. MI5. Then you did things like The Escape Artist with the king of all kings, David Tennant. Speaking,
Exactly.
I mean, we're going to be talking about other kings like King Charles III, King Charles II. But today, to me, David Tennant will always be my king. Speaking of kings, Versailles, the blockbuster, fantastic series all about the sexy, seedy underbelly of Versailles, or lots of bellies.
Lots of bellies. But I would say and co-created with the great, wonderful King Simon Mirren, who I have known for years and years. But together we had really an extraordinary time in the stately homes of France making that show. So, awful.
Yes, awful. Before we get to the stately homes of France, you and I were once young folks at the esteemed Cambridge University. We were, and you did
like 3 or 4 years ago.
It was 3 or 4 years ago, yeah. And you look exactly the same, which is actually true. Everyone who does sort of look the same. Like, if you'd shaved a little bit of beard, I wouldn't know the difference.
I did, but I made it look as if I have a beauty spot. Because of all the gray, this is one of the issues with beards. It's when you have the salt and pepper.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah, and the little beauty spot seems like the kind of thing that like the Sun King would have done. Is having
right.
Be.
Yes. Yeah. Or, venereal disease. But it's definitely.
It's one or the other. Yeah. Why not call it both? But you went on to do things like Footlights. But before that, you were, I think, doing musicals, and you did Guys and Dolls.
I did.
You, even though you were born in Honolulu, Hawaii, you really are a Scottish gentleman. And I became your dialect coach, didn't I?
You were brilliant. I got to say, you took us from cartoon to like sort of challenging humanist reality of the street. which is really what that musical needs to live.
I could sing
like the
every
original
single
Breeze,
song.
right? Oh no, I know. Same here. I was actually teaching my daughter the other day. What's it called? I don't know the name of the song, but it's the horn, something for flugelhorns. We got the horse right here.
Name is Paul Revere, and there's a guy that one. Yeah,
hard to sing with it too, but it's just I love that there's this.
I have you here today to talk about the week that was, and what a week it was if your name was Elizabeth.
No kidding,
right? We send our condolences to the royal family and send our congratulations to Prime Minister Liz Truss's family.
I mean, and you know the tube line as well.
That's the newest tube line.
And commiserations to the Sex Pistols, who's going to have to reform and re-record, right?
Yes, God save our king. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of name changing, a lot of new pillar post boxes made and stamps. I can't imagine what the money is going to look like.
People have been talking about how, in circulation, you can still sometimes, at least you could sometimes come across a different monarch's head on a coin because, who's bringing them to the bank. But it is quite arresting to come from a country that does have this iconography so deeply embedded in it. And that our postage system will change and the coinage will change. But talking of Versailles with Louis XIV, it's sort of the same principle for him, because he sent his image everywhere in France. He would literally send his portrait to sit in the countryside so everybody could see. He was like sort of, mail out, 17th century mail out. And it's just, it's always very interesting, what it's like. You're a historian, to look at just the way that history just keeps coming around in this bizarre, surreal, bonkers spiral. And
yes.
It was such a shock, I have to say. I watched the moment live when Hugh Edwards, BBC, was saying, the Queen is dead and the King and the Queen Consort. I said, what King?
Exactly.
Doesn't he have to sort of have a rubber stamp, like in the coronation? No, apparently it's like declassified. You can just turn somebody into with a magic wand that just instantly becomes monarchical.
But not Donald Trump's magic wand that magically declassified all those documents.
No, although that does sound like a really cool Harry Potter spell.
It would be very cool. Declassification.
Declassificano.
Declassificano. That would probably be it.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. Because you have that. Yeah. In honor of the Queen, I want to tell people what I am making, why I am wielding an actual wooden spoon and not using my fantastic 6-quart KitchenAid mixer, because I am making a dish that is so classically British. It's a recipe from my husband's great auntie Rawls, and it's written in her classic British hand. She remained a spinster all her life, bless her heart, because as she said, my husband, because she grew up during the World War II, my husband must have been killed during the war.
Oh.
That's why I remained a spinster. Bless her.
Heartbreaking. Good old Brits and their emotions, eh?
Yeah, exactly. She tucked them all away into this into this recipe, which she made dutifully. And it was a crumbly, it was sort of dry, but in a good way, raisin cake. I know you grew up eating these sorts of things, whether you were forced to or wanted to. I've made some tweaks in this. Like I've soaked the raisins in whiskey in honor of the Queen because she died in Scotland. And I'm adding nutmeg to it and some vanilla. But
are
otherwise,
they real raisins, or are they kind of the gooseberry sultana, like the munitions raisins?
Sultanas are hard to find here. And for those wondering, sultanas are just very large raisins. They seem fancier, but they're really just large raisins.
They're full of themselves.
They're the ego pigs of raisins. And if you get a recipe for like a British fruitcake, it calls for sultanas, for raisins, and for currants, like all the dried grapefruits and the currant of the world. And it does feel a little like overkill. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, it's an English pudding should be able to kill. That's one of the reasons for it. If you make a raisin pudding of any English sort, it should fit into a trebuchet. You should be able to blast through a castle or a human skull with it. That's in
case of emergency. I think it's really
that's probably where your husband's aunt first came across the recipe was in a munitions factory. But they would have been making these puddings just in case.
Well, she grew up in Coventry, so they had to.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So this is probably, oh my gosh, it's probably a secret recipe that we've never even thought about.
Right. It's like the V2 of English puddings.
This is it. And we're here and we're making it, people. The British are such practical people that they invent a dessert that not only eats well, keeps you nourished for days, and can keep for centuries. I mean, I think, I've eaten Christmas puddings that are at least 70 years old. And also
my dad's favorite recipe, actually, in his last year, we had a pudding conversation and we said, what would you like, your childhood pudding? And he barked across the room, plum duff, which sounds like a venereal disease.
Yes.
Along with spotted dick, I guess. But plum duff is basically Christmas pudding, sort of basic level. It's not like the Laredo version of the pudding. It's like it's just basically, if you stopped right now in your preparation, that would be a plum duff, I think, with dripping or something.
Yeah, you got to have some sort of lardy product. There has to be a lardy product.
Exactly. So, something that would just sit and be there through your teen years that you ate at school. I think that's the plan.
I think so too. When they start British public schools, which are private schools, they make a giant one and they just sort of, it's like sourdough starter, I think. But all these dishes have come back because of the Queen's Jubilee year. I think you were telling me earlier that your mother had memories too of raisin cakes.
Well, yes, it's death and weddings are the times that you're allowed to talk about emotions with other British people. And
you don't talk about them with any cracking of your voice or anything silly like that.
I don't understand what you mean.
Exactly. Yeah, sorry.
And I was talking to my mum about, because I was genuinely interested, the coronation 53, we're going to have another coronation.
That's right.
We have coronation chicken sandwiches at our favorite sandwich shop, Nadia's. We used to go to a student. And so, which had raisins in. You see, I'm bringing it all together here.
It's all coming together.
But the pudding that she remembered, I said, what was the meal that represented back time for you? I can't remember how old she was, but she was a little girl. And she said, well, it was roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, which is bizarre to me because she grew up in the Southwest, and some form of crumble or a Victoria sponge.
Well, the best.
Right? And so...
Probably an apple and blackberry or apple and gooseberry.
Yes,
crumble.
Gooseberry, which were my dad's favorite berries, which I found out today, since we were talking about gooseberries earlier. In France, they're called mackerel. The mackerel berry. They were used in a mackerel dish.
Really?
Yeah.
Like the fish?
Mackerel, yeah. They're I wish I could remember the French now, but it's just wonderful how these, and they used to be quite plentiful in America, but they have a bacteria on it that kills pine trees. And so all the gooseberry bushes were removed from forests to protect the pine trees.
I'm kind of okay with that since I really have never been a big gooseberry fan.
Yeah, it's basically the fruit you like if you don't like fruit very much.
I think that's true. But why do British people call people who stick out a little bit, who aren't welcome, a big gooseberry?
I think because of...
Is it related to the pine forests?
Protruding nature. And I'm sorry to go here again. I seem to be slightly obsessed, but I don't know what our rating is on the podcast. But the gooseberry bush used to be the slang for pubic hair in the 19th century.
I did not know that.
You were born under a gooseberry bush, which was a phrase. That's what it connoted. So the being born under a gooseberry bush means you didn't have a C-section, I guess.
And the first person to have a C-section, just bringing it to royalty, the first person in public, was Queen Victoria.
Right.
And she even got to have chloroform, which is kind of a great thing.
Not necessary for your plum duff. What is the name of this dish? It's raisin pudding that you're making.
It's just a raisin cake. Raisin cake. And if I had sultanas, it would be a sultana cake.
But we're going to call there that looks like a mystery soy sauce.
Shh, nobody should know. No, this is vanilla. Not used a lot in British cakes, but I always add it to everything because
very posh.
I have an issue. So this week, some things went on. I really wanted to have you on the show, not just because if you ask to have anybody on the show who's considered a royal expert, they expect to be paid megabucks.
Right.
I want that secret to be out there because I think that is grotesque.
I agree. I'm available literally at least half that price. I mean, under.
Oh, right.
Under.
Yes. Send a bill
substantially
to
under. Yeah.
Send a bill to Deep State Radio Network.
Not for you. Not for you.
No. Yeah, I'm available too for like a quarter of the price. I can undersell you. But I wanted to have you on because you, in your own way, are a royalty expert and have expertise with kings thanks to your writing of Versailles. So you went deep into what it's like to be a king. Do you have any tips for King Charles III?
Well, it's interesting. The French, English, the Norman conquest onwards, right? I think Britain and England in particular doesn't realize quite how French it is until 1066 onwards. And the Brits stole lots of lovely words. And the French stole some back, le weekend, le picnic, and so on. I think just those two. But
that's the only one.
Pretty much, why would you take anything else? And Louis XIV, who was the king that Simon and I focused on Versailles, was this kind of Kardashian with Macaron at the time, billionaire in a house, having a party. But the interesting thing about him, and I think, if you drill down to what the royal family means for Brits, and obviously opinion is divided quite substantially around this. Right. Growing up in Scotland as I did, it was even more substantially, I would say. But personally, I'm an admirer of somebody who does public service. And I think I saw a joke online about, in public housing and with universal basic income, as she did very well.
Yes. She had the ultimate public housing, right?
She did, but that's a destiny that she was just railroaded into, and we've seen what happens when they try to get out of that railroad. It's quite intense, and so I think the Louis XIV comparison it's this mechanism, right? It's this extraordinarily well rehearsed, and we saw this with the announcement about Operation. What's it called? It was a London Bridge, right?
London Bridge, where
the newscasters got into their funereal gear, which I see you're wearing. I'm sort of wearing. I work quite funereal and respectful.
Mine's navy blue though, because I will never be a subject to the Queen. Yeah, that's good enough.
Well, a nod to the French, the original Louis blue. I think that sense of articulation of social, your life being this kind of stopwatch, this Swiss clock constantly moving around. I'm struck by, they used to say that, I think it was Saint-Simon would say that you could tell what the king was doing in France by the time of day. You would know what was happening in that man's life. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I love, just to bring it back to you, it was the public eating. That's the thing that blows my mind. And I just can't see Charles having the same, although it would be fun, frankly, to try it, would be to have a royal banquet where it's just him and Camilla sitting on a pull-out table, and then it just starts to move out from there, because you'd have these kind of layers of people. Mm-hmm. Then you have the courtiers, and it would be the pecking order down. And I didn't know this, and maybe you can be the counterpoint, but I didn't understand this, that eventually after that meal had gone through enough hands, they would take it back to the kitchen, wait a bit, and then they'd give it to the poor outside finally. Yeah. And that's where sauces were invented, because they could hide the rancid flavor of the meat as usual.
Right.
Which I, again, found fascinating, possibly a boring.
People do argue that sauces were not created to hide the flavor of meat, but they mean in the wealthy, right? It was really just like a coverall for the poor who are going to get this stinky meat that came from the king's table.
Yeah, it's like painting over it. And I mean, Louis XIV, I think, had the galette de roi was around at that time. It was January 6th of his time. I think that was 12th night.
Yes.
But that had a little secret choking hazard inside for the kids who could be king for a day. And I don't know. I think Charles III is going to be.
That's a weird thing to hear. I'm sorry.
Right? It happened immediately. It's very hard to articulate how bizarre it is. You have to understand, like, all of these barristers in England are QCs. Overnight they became KCs. Which means associates of the Sunshine Band. Right?
KC and the Sunshine Band. That's going to be the new law court, the Sunshine Band. Right. It won't be like Greyfriars. It'll be I was trolling your Twitter feed, and I saw that you had a friend in there who was what I would have called QC 2 days ago. And I was like, it said KC after his name. I'm like, what's that about? And it dawned on me that he is now King's Counsel, not Queen's Counsel.
Absolutely. And they're going to change the flags. Don't forget the Royal Standard doesn't have the Welsh flag on it. You know, the little quadrant-y thing. And he's the Prince of Wales. So there's going to be, I mean, I'm getting into flags in a big way. I think that's the growth industry for the next 3 months at least.
And I've spent a lot of time in Wales because my in-laws live right on the border. I think I may just go a full Welsh dragon on this one.
I think it would be a good time to do that. I'll be interested, talking seriously for a moment. You know, Liz Truss wanting to, as far as I understand it, rip up all the solar panels and everything.
Go frack everything, right?
You know, and you've got Charles, who is, even though he took a helicopter to the Balmoral,
his mother was dying.
I know he's allowed that he's the most eco-friendly royal that I can think of in terms of the way that he's thought about the natural world. And I think that that's going to be an interesting moment, because don't forget, I mean, we've always had this image of the royal family as the head of state, right? There's a sort of functional solar system, and they sort of sit there and are really transactional functionaries rather than with any kind of tidal influence on policy. But then you sort of heard these stories, and I have no idea about the truth of them, about putting a little royal finger on the scale when it comes to land law or things that may just happen to influence large tracts of unbelievable generational wealth in a single family, for example, say. And
a nice German family, though, immigrants.
Yes, right.
Quick interruption, worth hearing. If you love sports, TikTok is for you. Game highlights, expert breakdowns, and fan reactions. Just the moments that matter. Download TikTok now.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
Yeah, Brexit was fine for them, but I think that the joking aside, I do think it's a really interesting moment. And as somebody said, I saw on Twitter, I don't know who says, sorry, this is your tweet, but it was, they had a bottle of milk in the fridge that's gone through two prime ministers and a queen. With the image of that being just, I don't know where we stopped the stopwatch, but it's an extraordinary time to be a Brit. I mean, all kinds of shit, quite literally, is flying into rivers and out in Britain. And this constant mother, grandma, has passed away, and everybody's been deeply affected in one way or another by it, because obviously these big moments affect you and have a refractive index into your own experience of loss. And I have to say, my mother would stand for the national anthem. I'm from that sort of, on her side of the family. That's
even if it was on television.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a bit of self-parody in it when she would do it. I think she's playing to the peanut gallery while doing it, but there was certainly, it's a devout reverence, whereas in Scotland, you know, where there's just a different experience of what it means to have the royals in your life and have shooting estates on your land. You can see how so many people just wanted to invade that country in the end. We're like a layer, we're a trifle, but like a million layer trifle.
Right. And all you have to do is like hop over Hadrian's Wall. It's not even that tall, really.
No, I mean, how easy was that? That was
yeah, really.
We should really have been.
In America, some people are bewildered as to why Brits are so caught up in this and sad, possibly, why they are calling emotion up from inside of them. And also, why is it on TV all the time in America? But I don't know if people kind of quite understand, even if whether you're Republican or Royalist, it's still because, like you said, she's a constant.
Churchill, I mean, she's been through Churchill onwards, right? We had the post-war consensus where everybody seemed to be getting on okay. And so she's an echo chamber back to that feeling of Eisenhower onwards, of like, let's just go get them and everything's possible and isn't life grand? And I think having somebody who just was the plumb line back to that and is a memory of the special relationship when it was in its heyday, I think is very powerful. And don't forget, I mean, I think we in America have, I can say that I'm passport holder and was born here. Like the people talk about where is the royalty in America? How do we define royalty? And people used to say it's about money in the checkbook, but that's not entirely sure. I just don't see that happening. But there is a sense of yearning for whatever that special source is, because we can't really agree on it. Whereas in Britain, it's so codified and clear. And again, speaking personally, I have no problem with that central core of the royal family functionally and GDP wise and everything. It's the sort of the ecosystem outside it, I think, is problematic when people see the civil list and see tax money going to just ridiculous people and reasons. And
there's no reason I should like curtsy to some lord who got his money in some dubious fashion 500 years ago.
And I'm married to a French woman, and God knows they didn't like their royals. However, counterpoint, they killed them all, but now their president lives in a palace. So
that's an ironic detail that I don't think people pay a lot of attention to.
Yeah, it's a kind of bait and switch, like, cup and whatever the three cup game of what they did, because
three card Monte or three card Trois Carte Monte.
Yes, I think that France is an example of what happens when you get rid of the function of what that is, a royal family. You invent another version of it, don't you? And so that's why we have the Kennedys, and that's why we look for dynasties. There we go.
That's
we got there in the end. We look for dynasties.
Right. And some in America right now, we had the Trumps, which is grotesque, and the Kardashians. In the olden days, we had people like the Kennedys, and we still we worship the Kennedys until they all, except for Caroline, God bless her, met their fate. People like it. It's, the ultimate celebrity, but it's also like a commercial enterprise being royal. That's, and it's a social construct. It's a great reason to spend your tourist dollars in Britain.
Right. No, it is. I mean, I think, that you run the numbers of what happens when Britain becomes a republic. To counterpoint it, well, the buildings will still be there. That you can still go into the Louvre, for example.
That's true.
Walk through
Versailles.
Versailles still there. Thank you. And Versailles still there. And I think that you can enjoy the pomp and the history of royalty in France. Doing that, I would just say that the buildings are better looking in Paris. I'm not sure Buckingham Palace is like my dream home. I would turn it to, a dog sanctuary probably if it was mine. But I think, right, wouldn't that be cool?
Can we have a wing for cats too, or are you just anti-cat?
I'm pro-cat as well.
Okay.
I don't really have a choice there, but you could do wing. You'd have to separate the wings, honestly. Yeah. I did a pet show once. It was my break. You don't know this. It was the first thing I did. I sold the pet show to ITV as a joke. Well, not a joke, but just as a kind of, wouldn't it be funny if there was a show called 999, which was dramatic reconstructions. We had 911 when it was here, right? Like Man on Cliff, 20 minutes of dramatic reconstruction. And then there was this kind of animal hospital show. And my friend Tessa and I said, what if you combine those two things and had animals saving people? And it turns out there's a ton of these kind of shows. So we pitched it, and it turned out I was just out of university in debt looking for, creative ways to clear it. And we sold the show called Pet Power. You could probably find it online somewhere with Anthea Turner, who was a huge star at the time. And now that'd be like a channel, right? That would be
its own channel.
589 Pet Power channel.
Right. And you'd be a billionaire as opposed to
I would be a billionaire. This is the problem. But we had a studio day, I remember, where we had at one end, we had a dormouse. And at the other end, no joke, we had a baby tiger. And I said, if somebody leaves the doors open in the wrong way, we're just going to have a very fat baby tiger that goes on. But wouldn't it be nice if something happened with those corgis? I mean, she loved the corgis so much. I'm just thinking, surely if I was running the royal family, and God knows after this podcast, I might be.
You might be.
Wouldn't it be nice that they did something for those corgis instead of I don't know, boiling them or whatever they're going to do. Because she said she didn't want any young dogs. Did you see that?
Yeah.
She didn't want any more because, and I understand the principle. She doesn't want these dogs. Sorry.
Well, they were like children to her. I'm sure she treated them with a lot of love, maybe more than her children.
Well, okay. Yes. Are you about to say the same thing I was?
Yeah. You say it because you're the guest.
No, you should say it because you're
No, you say it. You say it. No, you say it.
No, okay. The dinner with the doctor. Is that what you were going to say?
No, I was not.
Okay, will you say what you were going to say?
No, I was just going to talk about like her, like treating the corgis more like close family than her actual family. None of the corgis moved to California. That's all I'm saying.
That's true. Although, no, let's not go there. So I would say that there are two stories that stand up for me, which is why I'm pro QE2. And I just thought that of all the ways that she could be horrendous, right? She really wasn't. And so she was, it's in somebody's biography. I wish I could remember his name, but he was a war doctor, surgeon, who one of these amazing people traveling the world, just doing extraordinarily brave, wonderful things for humans. And he was at Buckingham Palace. It's in his memoir, I believe, sitting next to the Queen. And she, just because she's the Queen, said, "So, where have you come from?" And he said, "Aleppo." And she said, "Oh, what's that like?" Just because it's a banquet. And he started to lose it because obviously all the imagery in his head was just this savage, awful, horrendous vision. And she saw that and then took out a little bag of dog biscuits and gave it to him and said, let's feed the corgis. And they started feeding the corgis under the table with these dog biscuits. And after a while, he kind of calmed down and she said, "That's a lot better than talking, isn't it?" And I just thought that was evidence of such a giant beating heart underneath and a real understanding of psychology and empathy that I completely came over to the monarchist side at that point, because that takes a special kind of talent to understand what somebody needs in that moment.
To be honest, now that story has a very large lump in my throat because of that story. But the truth is, I actually have a dog biscuit right here because sometimes my dog comes through and I give it to him during the podcast. But now maybe I think I should eat it. That was completely under rehearsed, people.
Brilliant. The second story I must tell you, which in case you know it or don't know it, is when the Saudi prince came to Balmoral. Do you know the story?
No. Was he one of the good Saudi princes?
I'm not going to.
Or did he bring his bone saw or no?
I couldn't possibly comment, but I do know that it was a little while ago. But the Queen was an ambulance driver in the war, as you know. So she said to the prince, "Would you like a tour of the grounds?" And the answer really said, "Oh, sounds good." No. So he went into the Land Rover and his interpreter sat in the back. And the Queen got into the driver's seat.
Love it.
In an act of suffused with all the politics you could imagine, grinned at him and said, "Let's go," and proceeded to sort of Grand Theft Auto this guy through the sort of chundering single track muddy lanes of Balmoral at 90 miles an hour, happily chatting to him. And you sort of saw this guy sort of break into bullets of sweat. It just, I absolutely salute that.
I just want to pause and have us, if there's two images to have of the Queen, those are they.
Right.
And I feel like I've been watching TV nonstop and all the stories have been exactly the same. So I am grateful for you to bring some new thoughts about the Queen onto this podcast. If anything, it should. Thank you for that. I did want to know what they were going to do with the corgis, though. Is King Charles going to get King Charles Spaniels? Does he even like pets?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I don't know his relationship to pets. I mean, that's the skeleton key into the British heart, really, is pets.
But he does like, I think, it is the skeleton key. What was Barbara Woodward, the woman who taught people
Barbara
how
Woodhouse.
Barbara Woodhouse.
With this kind of slightly Nazi salute at the end, which everybody was doing in parks.
Yes. Do you do that to your daughter? Because I do that to my children when they were little. Sit. They're very well trained now.
Thank you all for listening. For subscribers to the Deep State Network, there's a special bonus section just for you. And if you'd like to become a subscriber, please go to the dsrnetwork.com. Thank you all for listening. You can find David Wolstencroft's shows airing on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and BritBox, to name a few. And you can follow him on Twitter at woolensocks.com. That's WOOLLENSOCKS. And please, and thank you to all my listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave a nice review in the Apple Store, the more reviews, the better. Please let's get that algorithm to love me. For the recipe, please subscribe to my Substack at marissaroadcup.substack.com. Have a wonderful week and enjoy cake.